Poetry in the Trail by Holly and Clancy Holly, chapters 22, 23, and 24. Chapter 22, How the Wheels Rolled Westward. And so the yoke left its hill and traveled westward. The trail hugged the flat banks of the Arkansas River, bordered by sand hills. The eastern half of Kansas had grass so tall a boy could be lost in it. But here grew gamma grass no longer than a finger. Buffalo grazed everywhere upon it. Sometimes they covered the plains like a moth-eaten brown robe, and their crisscross trails lay over the earth like a fishnet leading through the sandhills and down to the Arkansas. Dust from the caravan hid the trail, the animals' legs, the turning wheels. The beasts seemed to swim in a golden mist, followed by lazy ships. But this travel was not as easy as it looked. Axles moaned, ox bows squeaked in their sockets. There was a groaning of wood and iron as tons of weight moved slowly forward. Horses and mules ran sweat like soap suds, but the oxen were dry as boards. They could sweat only at the muzzle, and their noses gleamed like varnished leather. There was only one thought in these beasts' heads, to lift one heavy hoof ahead of the other. When they lagged, long whips cracked like pistol shots up and down the train, and sweating drivers bellowed themselves hoarse in a swinging chant. "Get on, you heaving hunks of hide! Lift those hooves! Where were you born? In a bucket of cold molasses? Glang, you Bud! Glang, you Bill! Get moving, you Pete! I'll roll you in thunder and grease your tails in lightning, and sizzle you pink in the skillet as their son." But where Jed walked beside the leading wagon, no whip ever struck starbright or bugle. They proudly led the train of rocking schooners to the tinkle of bells. Chapter 23, at Bent's Fort. And so at Cimarron Crossing, Jed called a council of wagon drivers. "Shall we cut south across the waterless desert or tackle Ratton Hill by way of Bent's Fort?" he added. "Bent's Fort," they answered. "We don't hanker to die thirsty." 200 miles further on they came to the fort. It was not an army post, though 60 men were needed to run it and keep it supplied, but a trading post built by the famous Bent brothers. Its adobe walls, 4 feet thick and almost 2 stories high, stood on a sagebrush paling like a lonely castle. Here the Santa Fe Trail crossed another running from Mexico north to Canada. Every Western traveler stopped here at some time in his life. Teepees clustered outside the walls. Though tribes might be at war, they met here in peace to trade their furs for trinkets. Heavy wooden gates creaked open to let the wagon men through. One of the Bents, wearing a beaded buckskin, greeted Jed and Buck. "So you made a safe journey again," said, smiling. "This time I was dead sure you would. My scouts have told me all about the yoke, and I've invited 100 braves to see this traveling piece of their old medicine tree." The fort buildings faced inward in an open square or patio lined with porches. Here the Indians gathered in their finest costumes. "Snoo me for a buffalo hump," exclaimed Buck. "The red people have sure turned out. Look, Jed, there's Sioux from Dakota country, Kiowas, Apache, and Comanches from down near Mexico, Pawnee and Kansas Crows and Blackfeet from the north, Cheyenne and Utes out of the Rockies, and Pueblo Indians from Taos and the Rio Grande. Enough hate and bitter tribal feelings in this bunch to blow the fort wide open, yet they're powwowing like brothers around the yoke, and all over a chunk of worthless cottonwood." Chapter 24, The Hill That Was Called a Mouse. The fort's blacksmith shop clanged for days, while men re-shod horses and oxen and repaired wagons. Then the caravan turned south because its western way was cut off by a blue wall, the Rocky Mountains. Troubles lay ahead. The desert dotted with greasewood, sage, cactus, and yucca. Wagons turned over its ravines and were slowly reloaded. Then a mountain blocked their way, a hill called Ratan, which in Spanish means mouse. While crossing this mouse, men and animals almost died with effort. There was no way open but up, up, up. The snake like trail wiggled in sharp zigzags. Struggling hoofs sent rocks crashing down on wagons below. Extra beasts were added to all teams. Starbright and Bugle led 40 oxen hitched to Jed's schooner. But even with 20 men straining at the wheel spokes, it moved upward only inches at a time. This was a cruel test for the cottonwood yoke, yet it did not break. At day's end, men and animals were exhausted, and still they must climb higher than Buck's rifle could shoot. It was 3 full days before the last outfit rested atop Raton Hill, almost 2 miles above sea level. Winds fresh from the snowy peak sighed through great pines. New Mexico's desert stretched southward below them, golden in the sun. Tangled ribbons of the trail braided together and vanished in distance. Men tied wheels to stop their turning, roped tree trunks against them to drag as extra brakes, and the caravan slid and skidded on its dangerous journey down. After such torture, the rest of the trip was a merry journey. They passed the ruins of Pecos Pueblos, which Coronado had visited almost 3 centuries before. They climbed easily through Glorieta Pass and camped one night on a plateau smelling of pine and cedar. Below, like a meeting of fireflies, a cluster of tiny lights blinked dimly. Then, in the velvet darkness, lay Santa Fe.